Oh, we're live. Okay, you ready?
I think all right. So if you could share where your students are in the unit right now at the time that you're about to teach this lesson.
Okay, so that's sort of an interesting little dynamic with my students. We do a curriculum where we have a new story every week, and then we build on those skills. Each week we start over again, building on those skills just because of the student population I have. So this is our new story, but building on the same skills of understanding vocabulary, identifying main idea, sequencing events. I have students like cognitive wise are between the kindergarten level to third grade level, even though they're high schoolers. So there's a various level of degree that we're looking at standards wise there of building their skill set there. So that's where every week sort of a new level or a new lesson or a new unit, but it's still based around those common ideas and those common standards of building vocabulary and comprehension.
Okay. What background knowledge do your students have or do they need to be able to complete this particular lesson?
This one, they don't really need to have tons. We're just going to be introducing the new story, looking at the vocabulary words that go with the story. So they, would be nice if they knew some of the words or some of the picture symbols that we're going to use to connect with the words. But I'm going to be assessing them throughout the lesson of their comprehension, and then that'll be what they submit to me at the end for me to check their comprehension of the day's lesson. Handed by the end of this lesson the new vocabulary words for the week.
Okay. What are, in your lesson plan, you had said using resources that connected with the text. So I was wondering what those resources were and how are your students going to explore them?
So resources that connect with the text, those are just going to be all of those vocabulary words and how they build on driving what is going on in the story. And we'll read two different versions of our weekly story. And one has a little bit better pictures. So that's why I really like to start with that one so that students can see real life pictures of what we're talking about. So, that will sort of be how we're connecting with the weekly text. We'll be just building those vocabulary in the comprehension, using picture symbols in the words to go with that. Does that sort of answer that maybe?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, how are your students going to complete your activity? Like, are you having them do it independently, in groups, as a whole group?
It's going to be individually for each person to complete. And then I have a few students who will definitely need some help from myself or my instructional assistant. So those students will get some handover help. Like there's one student who struggles with any cutting activity, like it'll take him an hour if we let him cut it by himself. So we always just jump in. So we're not spending an hour on cutting out 10 squares. And another student who struggles if I gave him the whole sheet to cut out. So I'll cut out the main strip and he'll complete it from there. My one student who's nonverbal, I will sit down with him and we'll work together on matching the picture symbols. So, and this is actually a main goal in his IEP is for him to be able to connect those individually. So that's where I can test him on day one and compare it to the end of the week to collect how did he do throughout that week. While others are a little bit higher functioning, so this isn't a direct goal for their IEP. But so does that, yeah, that's where that will be a little differentiated. They all sit in groups.
It sounds like you have a lot of ideas for differentiating in just within that one lesson.
Yeah, like that's what we do all day long.
Right.
That's just what we do. And then they all sit in groups. So sometimes they'll help each other within their groups as well. Sometimes, they think they're getting away with cheating, but, they're also still just helping each other out.
Yeah.
It's fun learning the vocabulary. So, but yeah, so that's where a little differentiation you'll definitely see going on in my room.
Okay. What are your students expected to do if they complete the activity early or if you have any that don't complete it within the class period?
That is like for this particular activity, this is like a routine activity we do every Monday when we introduce our story. Unfortunately, I don't really have another awesome activity for them to go on to. But then that's usually where they're helping each other in their groups if there's one who's done early. But myself and my instructional aide do go around and check and make sure they have the right ones. And then once everyone's done identifying it on their paper, they come up to the board and they identify them as a group just to make sure, as another check, that everyone has the correct answers on their page. So for identifying all the vocab.
Okay. Okay. What technology is used or could be used to enhance the learning in this lesson?
We're going to use the Promethean board, and then they're going to have a hard copy of the picture symbols on their desk. You won't see it in this lesson, but they all have Chromebooks, and so I emailed a copy of the story to them, and on day 2, they read the story to the class, and we do some other activities from there. But this is just our introductory. So I probably could let them read it on their Chromebooks. I usually find that if on day 1, when I'm doing most of the reading, if they have their Chromebooks out, they're clicking on other things or scrolling ahead. So I haven't really found a good way to integrate some technology in keeping us on pace and engaged. So
just fit for the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. How will your students remain engaged throughout the lesson, or how do you kind of check for that or keep up with that?
Well, while we're reading the story, we ask questions about things, we explore pictures. The program that we get our stories from actually has website links and all that. So we're able to explore beyond just the immediate text there. So that way we can connect. And this story is about the X Games, which actually happened this weekend. Those snow days that you talked about are like backed us up. So we're still trying to read the cool stories while there's a cool story. So in the X Games were this weekend. So there's going to be some cool videos that we can link and see and just talk about any of our experience with snow and all that. So we'll engage, items to keep them engaged and check to see if they remember things. And when we read from story 1 to 2, I try to ask them probing questions from the first story if they remember and were paying attention to the first version of the story.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. How will students, and you kind of already talked about this, make connections with this lesson to previous lessons that you've had?
Well, so yeah, the routine that we have is sort of established from the previous lessons. And then we really see maybe a difference as the week goes on, and that they build from story or from level to level in the test. So like I have 2 really low kiddos who are definitely kindergarten level, maybe even a little lower, that they do a particular test. Then I have a couple who are a little bit higher reading level and comprehension level, so they go to level 2. And then I have a large group who are level 3. And so we talk about that, how, when you get to a certain proficiency level on level 1 or level 2, you can go up to level 3. Does that sort of, but that's like a long trek kind of thing of how we see some progress there. But they're definitely in our routine. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm chicken walking here. So
no, so, your job sounds very interesting, and you are a special person to be able to do that with those students. Okay.
I thought about that as I was reading your lesson.
Yeah, good ways. Okay. My last question was, how are your students going to show mastery of your specified learning objectives?
So for this one, it will be, did they appropriately match the picture symbols on their own to the vocabulary words? And that will hopefully improve if they don't get 100% mastery on day 1, as we go through the week and are using that vocabulary and using it again and again and again in all the other activities that we do throughout the week. So, and that's something that my assistant and I just like take note of how well certain kids did. Like we have some who will be right on it, like those who are really on the 3rd grade reading level will definitely do well on the vocabulary, maybe get tricked up by 1 or 2 pictures that are a little difficult to determine. But how do we go from there for those others who needed individual assistance? I had to fix a lot of them and all that. Yeah.
Sounds great. Okay. Do you have any, are there any special situations or circumstances that I should be aware of? And you kind of already explained.
Yeah. I don't think anything more than that. I mean, yeah, we we're a little different. We do things a little different. But I hope, yeah, you still get to see that they're learning and demonstrating their skills.
Right.
Even though, yeah, they're not your typical high school classroom skills that you're looking for. So.
Okay. And is there anything specific you would like me to focus on when I watch your lesson?
No, I will say I'm welcome to any feedback. Anything you see that I can improve on would be awesome.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay, so now shall we switch roles?
Yeah. Do we want to pause this and do it? Do we have to submit 2 different ones or 1?
I think the way they made it sound like was just 1.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, let's go crazy and let's dive into this and see how well I don't do. Okay, so and scene. Hi, Lindsay. How's your day going?
Going great. Been a lazy Sunday for me.
Nice. Can you go ahead and share with me like where your kids are through this unit? Where's this lesson going to fall that I'm going to be able to see this week?
Okay, the lesson that you're going to watch is the second day of our new unit on functions. So we actually are just finishing up testing this week, and then we're starting the unit, and this will be the second day. So they've kind of been introduced to the topic
one
day, and then we're continuing that on with this lesson.
Okay, awesome. That was one of my questions I had. I wasn't sure how much practice they had already had with this, or was this a new skill? So thanks for clearing that up a little. So how will you know that they've mastered your objective that you've stated for them of being able to sort those functions and relations?
Well, to answer your previous question, the first day is kind of more of like a note-taking introductory type day. So they'll have already have the notes. They'll already have like the definition of a relation and a function and what makes them different. And then this lesson is they get to explore more like looking at graphs, tables, and mapping diagrams to figure out if it's a function or not. So for this lesson, the way that they're going to show if they meet the learning objectives is for the first activity, when we do the task cards, that's going to be more like independent practice where they're going to go around and answer them on their own. And then we're going to go over those answers together so that they can see if they're getting them right or wrong. And then the second part of the lesson is the sorting activity where they're going to glue them down, whether they fall under function or under relation. And that's going to be turned in as a little classwork grade in the right spot.
Okay, awesome. Is that something you guys are going to go over as well? Or is that something that you're checking to see if they individually understood that for the when they're sorting that second activity?
Right. That one is going to be taken up. So they'll turn that in without having gone over the answers. And then once I've been able to look at it and give them a grade for it, I'll give it back to them and we'll talk about if they have them in the right spot or if one needed to be moved and that kind of stuff.
For your extra practice, is that your activity for your early finishers, or is that something that everyone's going to work on?
Well, I kind of threw that just because with timing in previous years, sometimes these activities get done really fast and everybody finishes and we have time to do something together. So that could happen, but if not, that's an option. I also have a set of Chromebooks. They don't have their own, but we have just like a class set that I keep because there's some math games and software that they get on. So I use that a lot for the early finishers, just have them get on a Chromebook, and it's kind of like a reward time because, you know, they're not doing just extra work, but still getting practice.
Awesome. And I thought of something while you were saying that, and I should have jotted it down, and I didn't. There was something magical you said, and it didn't click, but yeah. So yeah, you definitely adjusting for what your kids may or may not need. And with this being new learning, you know, we don't know exactly how well they're going to do this time. So, answered another question I had because I was going to ask you if the first activity and the second activity were linked, like if you were going to use the same equations or if you were going to be using different ones. And you sort of answered that that it's going to be a little bit different there. In the they're going to start off individually. Is it typical for your class to do activities like this where they're going to have to be up and moving, or is this something that is different, maybe outside of their comfort zone? Or
I've done it before. Usually maybe like once each unit, I try to do something where they're not just sitting in their seats doing practice. So I like to use the task cards because it's still, even though they're up and moving around, it's still very structured because they're doing like one problem at a time. I usually have a timer on the board for like a minute or however long they need, and they know to wait till the timer goes off to move to the next one. So, because I like don't like crazy chaos all the time. Like I need it to be structured, even if we around.
Yeah. Well, and they're middle schoolers. They need lots of directions. So is there any kind of extra routines or procedures that you're going to need to go over, you think, to make sure that they know what they're doing or anything like that? Is that something extra that you feel like you might need to add, or you think they're going to go right with the flow?
I definitely will have to go over it with them very specifically, verbally, and probably have it written out on the board, because I always have the ones that like to move on before the timer goes off, or look across at the next desk, or look at their neighbor's paper and try to get done first, even though it's not a race and it's not going to be a grade. So, they don't have to make sure they have them all right. It's just for them to practice. So yes, there will be very explicit instructions of the activity before we begin.
Awesome. For looking at your assessment, can you explain to me what the Plickr assessment is? Like what kind of use or skills or technology are you going to be using with that? Or
those are these little cards that each student is assigned a number, and it has a little like barcode thing on the card, and around each edge it has A, B, C, or D. So I can post a question up on the board, and whatever they think, like on the Promethean board or whatever, and whatever they think the answer is, they turn their cards so that letter is at the top and hold their card up, and I can take my cell phone and scan their cards and get the answers. And then that collects all the answers, and we can talk about, I don't say who put what answer, but how many people put this, what the right answer is. So I usually have a few of those questions ready in case there's, 5 extra minutes at the end. Sometimes I use it as, the exit ticket or like a short quiz, just to, have something for them to do for a quick assessment at the end of the lesson.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think I've heard of those before. I just didn't remember them being called Plickr assessments. That's an awesome tool. Yeah. You definitely have a lot of things planned out to make sure that you're getting lots of instructional time out of these kiddos. So that's awesome. Is there any other uses of technology that you think you could add at this point in the unit for this kind of lesson?
Well, I was thinking about it earlier when I was thinking of your questions, because I was thinking, well, she might ask me some of these, so I need to know what I'm going to say. But the only thing that I really could think of was I could probably do the sorting activity on Chromebooks maybe, and not have them cutting them out and gluing, because I could do some kind of like Google slide or something where they just move the pictures or whatever. But I also like that they're cutting them out, because it gives me something I can hang up and have in the room once they're graded and everything. And of course we use scientific calculators, but this lesson, honestly, they're not doing much computation, so we probably won't even use them that day.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that's good. And yeah, we don't always have to have the technology to prove that they're learning. So that's awesome. Is there any special circumstances or anything else that I need to be aware of or be prepared for or anything like that?
I don't think so. Hopefully they'll be how they always are and nothing crazy happens, but it is middle school. So
yes, it's middle school. I expect it to be a fun, adventurous lesson. So is there anything in particular that you'd like for me to focus on for you in regards to viewing my video?
Well, the only thing I was thinking about was this lesson there's really not much connection to the real world, or there's really no real world examples, because this is like the beginning of the unit, and we don't really get into the connections until a few days later in the some of my lessons. So this one is that's why I kind of tried to have these activities where they're up and moving and cutting things out, because honestly, it's not the most relevant
Yeah.
information to them, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%.
Have to
Like,
learn
what in the world could I connect this to in real life as I was reading over the lesson plan? Yeah. So,
yes. So it's very mathy, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
just if you had any ideas or noticed anything where I could bring something in or, have an example,
Yeah.
that would be very helpful. But any feedback is great.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm excited to get my math on and test myself on your functions and relations and see how I do throughout the lesson, see if I know any of this or remember any of this from middle school. So
I had to relearn it all when I started teaching this class. And this is my advanced math class. So a lot of it gets into like algebra type stuff. And so I really had to go back when I started and look up some Khan Academy and some.
Yeah, girl. Yes, that's awesome. Well, I look forward to your lesson, and hopefully all the technology goes really well this week and everything runs smoothly.
Yes, same to you. It was very nice talking to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate it. If you'll send me the link and we should be good, right? Maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Awesome.
All right.
Have a good night, girl. And I'll message you if there's any issues.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.